Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's HCMx Radio, the only podcast in the HCM arena that weaves current market research, HR technology, and industry leaders into each episode. Our HCMx Radio host is our Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook.
Hi, I'm Rachel Cook. I'm the COO at Brandon Hall Group and the host of our HCMx Radio podcast. I'd like to warmly welcome Potoula the Senior VP of Product Management at Skillsoft. Hi, Potoula. How are you today?
Hi, Rachel. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to have you on with us and to discuss some very relevant topics and especially what's happening in our learning environment today. And also with us in our joining our conversation is Dave Wentworth, our Principal Learning Analyst at Brandon Hall Group. Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm great, Rachel. Thanks again for having me back.
It's always a great conversation. And before we dive into our topic today, Potoula, I would love for you to share a little bit about your background to our listeners and viewers. If you could tell us a little bit about your career, any hobbies, anything that you'd like to share, that would be great.
Sure. So I'm the head of product management at Skillsoft right now. So Skillsoft is a corporate learning company, and that is the space that I really love. So my career for the last 10 years or so has all been in the space of learning, where learning becomes the thing that opens the door to the next opportunity. So before I was at Skillsoft, I worked at Kaplan Test Prep, where we helped students prepare for entrance exams for graduate school and for licensing exams for nursing and medical school. Before that, I was at the College Board, which was also a similar moment where doors open. I worked in the AP program and in the SAT program. So that's what I love. My career, I've been in product management that entire time, helping to shape the product, make sure it solves a problem, adds value for our users. So it's a lot about problem solving and understanding our customer and building something that's going to be great for them. In my personal life, I love to travel. I've been to 44 countries and counting, not counting this year where I've gone nowhere, but in the past. And when I travel, I love to pick up artwork along the way. So my home looks a little bit like an art gallery, reminds me of all the places that I've been.
Nice.
And last year we bought a boat because we couldn't travel anywhere. So that's the new hobby. I can't wait to get that back in the water.
That's always fun. Where do you plan on going when you start traveling again? What's the first place being at 44 different countries? Wow.
Well, actually back to Greece. I have a lot of family in Greece, a lot of relatives. I haven't been there in a couple of years, and that's at the top of my list for as soon as COVID is over to go visit family there.
Nice. One of our business partners, his girlfriend's from Greece, and so she talks about it all the time. I've never been. I've been to Europe and I've been to the Caribbean, but not Greece. That's on my list. I hear it's beautiful. So, well, welcome again. And, this year has been a unique year for all of us. And, I think some companies have, in spite of everything, have been able to continue the momentum with their, with production, with learning, with, still, growing their business in spite of, the circumstances. So, and I think, we see in our research that learning is paramount to the success of companies and to be able to be sustainable. So let's, begin on my first question. And Dave, maybe you can share, kind of open up with some of our research in learning in the flow of work. And what have we seen from the research? How has COVID and the remote work impacted learning?
Yeah, I mean, clearly everyone's pretty well versed now in how things have changed and so much more remote work. And I think also coming to the realization, though, that that's not just a temporary thing. I mean, that the workforce of the future is going to be much more of a hybrid between remote and in-person work, with some people permanently remote, some people permanently in the office, some people floating back and forth based on various different schedules. And so, that sort of puts a new dynamic into things that learning and development we're already sort of wrestling with, is how do we reach people where they are when they're working, and now we're not even sure where they are when. So it puts a little bit more pressure on the ability to make learning available in a lot of different formats, a lot of different, I mean, just making it more accessible so that it fits with wherever somebody may be in their workday. And so, not only did it change that, but, we had been talking about learning in the flow of work for a long time prior to 2020. And now whatever the flow of work is has changed while we were working on it. So everyone's sort of re-engineering that now. What does that look like? I mean, the principles remain the same, and the idea that trying to leverage different types of tools and technologies to get learning closer to that moment of need, that moment of performance. I mean, that doesn't change. There's just some logistics behind it now that are slightly different that some organizations were prepared to deal with. Others have been struggling a little bit because it's been such a wholesale change of how they thought about the learning environment.
I agree. And Potoula, how does learning in the flow of work apply to the individuals, teams, and the enterprise at large?
Yeah. So, I would say, I agree with everything that Dave said. So we saw huge changes in the way, in the skills that you needed to do your regular job. So, think of how many people had to learn how to work remotely. Like, what does that even mean? Like, how do you build relationships when you can't meet somebody face to face? How do you have empathy for the difficulties that your coworkers are going through? How do you manage a virtual team that might be in a different time zone and, or not, or down the block, but now they're virtual? So we saw huge increases in learning across the board on those skills. We saw like 62 times increases in the usage of our courses around virtual work, around empathy, around EQ. So, I think, everyone had to learn how to, work differently and then how to learn differently. So learning in the flow of work and how it affects the individual, there is no flow of work anymore. There's like the flow of life, right? We're working everywhere. We're working, from home. We're inspired by what happens at home to what we might do in our career and vice versa. All those lines have blurred. And I think for the individual, learning in the flow of work means flexibility, means choice, means convenience, means being able to self-direct their career through learning new skills that they might need for their current role or future role, and doing that in the structure that makes sense for them, at the time that makes sense for them, in the way that makes sense for them. And so I think it's about convenience and flexibility for the individual, and it's a little bit different for the team. So for the team, I think really it's about context for the learning. Why is this learning important right now for this project that we're working on, for that deliverable that's due? So the learning can be incorporated into the team's work, into the project's work, and that gives new context. It gives it new purpose.
So that the new term is different. It's not the work-life balance. It's it's the flow of, I like your new term. What did you just say? It's the flow of life. So work and flowing in with life, right? I think there's no end and no beginning now. It's kind of continuous. And in some ways it's great, in some ways it's challenging because you have to figure out, I think the individual needs to figure out how best to organize themselves and to, to kind of shift gears, if you're only working from home and you have a family, or maybe you don't have a family, you still have to find balance with, figuring out what's your, where you can have your outlets, or, how you can maximize your day. So I think, and now going back to the question, how do you make this at scale, for the organization? What's the organization's role? And technology is the enabler, right?
I think everyone looked to their organizations as we started all working remotely. Everyone looked to their organization to help create that community when you don't have four walls around you, right? How do you have community among colleagues? How do you have community? How do you have that feeling that we're all part of the same organization, striving for the same goal, when you're not together in a town hall, where you're not in front of each other, when you're not having an annual sales kickoff where there's a lot of excitement that's, physical? And so I think a lot of enterprises look to these collaboration tools to say, how can you help me achieve that? How can you help me create this digital community for my organization? When you look at the growth in something like the use of MS Teams, it's remarkable. They have 115 million daily active users right now, and they had 75 million pre-pandemic. That humongous growth, right? Organizations have introduced these tools, have in mass trained their employees on how to use these tools, and now those tools create an opportunity for learning in the flow of work. They create the access points, right? So whether you're looking at MS Teams or Slack, obviously Slack's a smaller technical community, but they even have 12 million daily active users. So it creates these opportunities to introduce learning in the flow of that work through these tools and their pretty remarkable integration capabilities.
Absolutely. And my next question is we ask this all the time, around personalized learning. And our research has shown the importance and the impact that personalized learning has. So how do you create learning that's not a one size fits all? How do you make, how do you offer that level of personalization and scalability at the same time?
Yeah. Well, first you have to think about, why does personalization matter, right? So you might say, well, everyone needs the same certification. Let's say you're a company, you want everyone to have the CompTIA Security Plus certification, right? So the end state might be the same in your view, but the starting point might be different for everyone, right? People come in with different education, different professional experiences. The project they just did might have prepared them differently for achieving that learning goal. So the starting point is different. So that's the first thing that's different among people. That's the first reason why you need personalization. The second reason you need personalization is because people are different in their readiness to learn, in their motivation to learn, in how they approach learning. Some people are self-directed, some people are not. Some people will kind of wake up in the morning with a lot of energy around learning. Others need a nudge, need a reminder. Some people need structure. An unstructured learning environment that's all self-directed doesn't work for everybody. So choice, options, and helping people find their way into the learning path that's right for them, or recommending something based on their learning behaviors, helps you meet them where they are in terms of readiness and motivation. And then lastly, preferences are different because situations are different. I might only have time for audiobooks in the car. That's all I have time for. I can't fit anything else into my day right now. Next, 3 months from now, maybe that'll be different. Right now, that's the situation. So understanding that people are different, life situations, and creating those options so they could watch, they could read, they could listen, whatever works for them. Creating learning in these different formats or modalities is super important. And then so having ways to personalize learning matters, and then being able to deliver that to individuals specific to their needs and their circumstances also matters. And we use AI for that, and and create very personalized experiences for our users using a variety of different types of AI. So we use collaborative filtering, and we use something called Google BERT natural language processing to personalize the experience.
That was my next question, was, creating that using AI and learning personas. How do you design the digital learning for these personas? Can you expand a little bit on that? I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. So when we look at the personas for learners, right, it's a common practice to think about personas based on demographics. Here are millennials, here's Gen X, and they're different like this, and to create your personas based on demographics. Or to base your personas based on, let's say, functional role in a company. We've taken a different approach to personas, and we focus them on learning behaviors. How do you learn? And regardless of what you're learning, your approach to learning we might see a pattern there. So we have a self-directed persona, and for them we create different experiences. So we make it easy for them to find learning paths that are based on their role, easy for them to find learning paths based on skills that they might be trying to build. We use a lot of AI to make it easy for them to get a set of recommendations that relate to the skills that they're trying to build. So they're self-directed, and they'll use all of these capabilities. We have another persona called the problem solver. This is someone that thinks about learning only in the context of, I'm solving a problem right now that I have at work. So when we talk about learning in the flow of work, it reduces barriers and introduces learning to this persona, the problem solver, in new ways. So the problem solver is not someone that's likely to say, oh, did my organization get a learning platform from, what is that learning platform? They're only interested when they have a problem that minute that they need to solve. And then they will search. And if it's easy at that moment, then they can take advantage of everything that they have available to them. So learning in the flow of work, integration with different other platforms they might be using is important for that persona. We have a directed learner persona. This is somebody who wants confidence that they've done everything expected of them, but they might not do more. And so they might be looking for their manager to make a recommendation, for their leader to make a recommendation. So we make it easy for managers to drive team-based learning for that type of persona that's looking for more direction. So we build our feature sets that way based on learning behaviors.
And so who determines the behavior? Is this determined by the individual or by the manager?
So in our case, we do a lot of research on learners, and we've seen these patterns of behavior, and we've organized the personas based on the behaviors that we see in the platform, and based on some in-depth interviews that we conduct with learners, all year long. So so it's based on what we observe. And we build the feature sets that way. But we do create features in the platform for the learners to self-direct, for them to raise their hand and say, I'd like a goal and reminder. We have a feature called goals and reminders. You could set a goal so that the platform nudges you to learn. So we have a lot of learners taking advantage of that feature. We have a badging feature for those that are more self-directed to reward them as they take next steps along their journey. So we build out features, and there is an element of the learner starting to behave that way and then flowing into the feature sets that we've designed for that persona.
Interesting. So it's kind of like you're using Amazon in a way. You're shopping, and it determines your behaviors or your buying or your search behaviors. But you also have the ability to put in your own filters and to shop on your own in some ways. So if you're thinking about learning in the sense of Amazon, that's been around now for quite some time, I think now the learning industry is kind of following the retail industry in some ways, or the social, the way that we interact in our social platforms too. So they were kind of the pioneers here, and it's great to see. I think the workplace has now, I think, mirrored how we operate in our personal lives, right? So
one thing that Amazon's made famous is the recommendations that they serve. And so they have AI that they use called collaborative filtering. And, where they'll tell you, oh, somebody that liked this book also bought that book, or somebody that bought these two things with it. So when they do that, they're looking at people like you. They've profiled your behavior. They find other people that behave the way you behave and then serve you recommendations based on what those people are doing. So we've actually employed that type of AI in the platform. So we have a set of recommendations that are based entirely on this collaborative filtering method. And we've seen 46% increase in time spent learning from people that are accessing those recommendations versus other recommendations on the site that we develop using other methods. So there, we are absolutely explicitly like taking our cues from what Amazon is doing. And that's how people evaluate everything. Every experience they have these reference points. Like Amazon is the reference point for recommendations. Netflix is a reference point for browsing. Spotify might be a reference point for playlists. So these consumer sites are really setting the pace for corporate learning, and we're taking our cues from what they do.
And Dave, we've been talking about this too, going back, a few years now, how learning has evolved. And it's not just so much about building these great programs, but, having the ability to also be a marketer of these programs, to be able to raise the awareness that they are here and that they have the ability to help you grow or help you do better in your jobs. So, no longer it's just about the education or the the author. It's really about the integration of how this is perceived and how you, as the consumer or the learner, can be able to access it.
Yeah, I mean, Sometimes organizations get a little hesitant about personalization, especially when you start talking about scale, because they think of personalization, oh, it has to have the person's name, their favorite color, a picture of their favorite dog, and that's not personalization. It's more about things that Potoula is talking about. Most of the data, if not all of the data that you would need to create this level of personalization exists and is available to you. It's just a question of, are you pulling it together? Are you leveraging it? Are you feeding it into tools that have machine learning and AI that can make these decisions for you, so that you don't have somebody manually trying to line somebody up with a class or a course or a program? That will never work. That's not scalable. And so it's more about that. And then when you talk about sort of the marketing thing, I think a key piece of the personalization, contextualization thing is the what's in it for me factor. We talk a lot about engagement and learning, like how do we engage learners, and personalization is a way, but so often engagement for learning is focused on other buttons in the right place. Do I have the right kind of interactions? Are people visually stimulated by this? But the reality is, if you don't provide the learners with, hey, this is why this is important to you, or maybe you might like it, or if you can't draw a connection between who I am, what I'm doing in the organization, what my role is, and this learning, then it's a hard sell from the get-go, right? So that's the first stage of the marketing, is what's in it for me. And we're always so afraid of that phrase, so it seems like it's selfish, but the reality is that's what everybody's thinking at work, in a very, what's in it for me, not that I'm on my own. It's just, how is this going to help me do my job for the organization better? So give me the what's in it for me. Boom. Before you've even clicked on the link or opened whatever it is, the engagement level is already there, right? Somebody's already bought into, okay, then show me. And it's a big piece of this. And I think if companies start to think about personalization more in terms of maybe contextualization, I know it's semantics, but it's a little easier to swallow, and it doesn't feel so difficult. Because that's all these other things are doing, is they're creating context. I mean, Amazon and Netflix don't necessarily care who you are specifically. They just care about what they know about you, and they want to deliver an experience based on that.
Yeah, we're a member. I couldn't agree more. We're a member of something called the Digital Learning Consortium. It's a group of learning companies, and so we conducted research with 5,000 learners, and asked them, what would motivate you to invest more time in learning? And exactly what Dave said was the top thing that they said. What's in it for me and my current job or my future job? If you link the learning to my role, I am so much more interested than if you don't. If people have trouble figuring out how skills map to roles, they know what their job is today. They know what their aspirational job might be, the next step they want to take in their career, and they're looking for somebody else to give them confidence that they're focusing on the right things that are going to make them successful. And so we've done a lot of work in learning paths that are role-based, that explicitly help you go from point A to point B. You're a data analyst today. How do you become a data scientist tomorrow? What are the steps that you take? And so those are some of the most popular things in our site right now, are role-based learning paths.
Mm-hmm. And you're also a founding member of the consortium, right?
Yeah, we are. Right. We are. Mm-hmm.
And you're also helping advance more women into tech. Mm-hmm. Or a mentor.
I care deeply about that personally.
Mm-hmm. We did a lot of research a few years back on advancing women in technology leadership. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's fascinating, especially the perception of what women are, either their interest or what they need for development versus what males' point of view are and women's point of view are. It was fascinating. So that's great that you're so involved there, because there are a lot of gaps, and I think
women are 25% of the tech workforce, and only 18% of computer science majors in college. Huge gap.
Actually, I think that's a little bit higher than what it was a few years ago. So at least it's going up a bit.
But there are a lot of organizations that have formed. Girls Who Code is one that's well known now. I'm involved in mentoring with an organization called Built by Girls. So I think that's one of the good news stories here, is that a lot of organizations have surfaced and are getting funding from big foundations to help close that gap, and to encourage girls, like even at the younger ages, middle school, elementary school, to be excited about STEM and to see themselves in STEM careers going forward. And I'm really encouraged by all of that.
Yeah, it's great, and I'm seeing it too. I have a daughter that's 8, and there are a lot more, I think, fun and ways to look at STEM in projects, through just even getting out and gardening and looking at how things grow. That's all science, and so I think it's just the way that it's offered. It's more creative now than just here's science and you're in this box and you're just going to be coding, and it's much more than that. And even with that, there's so much it's all about creativity, and I think women have a lot to offer and are creative in that way. So I think the more that we can encourage them, especially at a young age, we'll start to see that gap close or shorter. So going back to, you mentioned skills driven learning roadmaps, or can you talk a bit about how does skills mapping improve learning experiences and outcomes? And this is kind of our last topic that we're going to cover today. So I think you kind of started to talk a little bit about it, but it'd be, if you can offer a little bit more of an explanation, that'd be great.
Yeah, so when you think about skills mapping, what you're doing there is you're mapping skills to a role, and then so that there's clarity for everyone. There's clarity for the enterprise, there's clarity for the learner around what you need to be successful in that role. And then you're mapping the learner capabilities against those skills. Where are they strong? Where might there be a gap that they can close? So you give the learning a purpose and also an efficiency. You're focused on closing your gaps. That makes learning a little bit more efficient, and you can achieve your goal faster. And so I think skill mapping in general helps achieve that. We also map at Skillsoft, we map skills to roles and content to skills for our customers as part of sort of the package that they get if they're a Skillsoft customer. We get 2,000 requests a month. So there's a lot of activity among large organizations and small organizations in mapping skills to roles and making sure that their learners are focused on the things that are going to matter the most. So we see, there are also some common taxonomies that are being used, like Sophia or DDAT in the UK, or Lominger and others that are also very common to help you, think through what are the skills that I need for a first-time manager or leader of people, and and then all of the technical skills as well.
And where do you competencies fall within your skill mapping?
So we have a skills taxonomy that rolls up all of our content from micro-learning content into skills, into competencies, and into these big sort of skill families that make our content a little bit easier to navigate and make it easier for the learners to self-select where they want to focus. And so, one step in using the platform is for learners to be able to identify skills that they want to build, and for the platform to personalize against those skills so that all their recommendations, both in the platform and also through the notifications that they might get, are all personalized to them. And so we use our skills taxonomy to achieve that. And we have requests from our clients for alternative curations that are aligned directly to some of the other common taxonomies, like Sophia is one that we commonly get questions about, and we're working on aligning our content to that taxonomy in particular.
And basically, this is really helping you build the enterprise capabilities, right?
Yeah. So when we think about skills in the enterprise, we think about 5 different areas of focus for an organization to build the capabilities of their workforce, basically. So the first step is what we've just been talking about. What is the skills taxonomy? How do skills and competencies make up that taxonomy, so that they know where to focus, and so that the learners know where to focus and the enterprise knows what's important to them and communicates that clearly. So that's kind of the first step. And then the second step is, how am I doing against those skills? And so assessments are often used for that. And it's also important for the content to be organized in a way that will help learners navigate. So beginner content, intermediate content, expert content, so that people of varying levels of mastery of those skills know what to do next. So assessments is the second component of that. And once you kind of know where you are, how do you develop a learning path that's specific to you that helps you get from point A to point B? So we have learning paths called Aspire Journeys inside our platform, which are designed to do exactly that in a linear, simple to follow way, no guesswork. You can be confident that if you follow this path, you will have what you need to build the skill and demonstrate the skill. These learning paths often include the active learning, to coding labs, different prompts to practice what you've learned in your actual work, a variety of ways to make the learning active. So that's kind of the third component. The fourth component is when a learner starts down this path, how do you help them stay on track? Good intentions, but sometimes work gets in the way, life gets in the way, and they need that extra push to stay on track. So how does the platform have that digital dialogue with the learner? Remind the learner to stay on track. What are the nudges? What are the sort of recognitions, things that keep them on track, streaks, points, badges, things that recognize achievement in a way that keeps you motivated to keep going. And then the last element is, so where are we in the organization? What are the analytics and what are the data tell us about the competencies of the workforce and what to do next? So analytics are the last piece of that. So we think about that as a framework for building out, building out a very strong skills focus for any L&D leader.
Absolutely. And, it's great to see all the work that you've been doing. And we've been following and working with your organization for a decade or more. And, it's great to both be in this space and to see, your clients and to hear from them, their success stories, and also all the awards that you won over the years as well. So, and, it's, you're doing great, you're having such a great impact. So and thank you for sharing. Dave, is there anything else that you'd like to comment on or expand on some of the topics we discussed?
No, I mean, I guess the only thing I would leave on is, since we were talking about the skills piece, is that unfortunately there's no real magic bullet out there for the skills for an organization. I think we get a lot of inquiries about it. Companies are looking for something easy. They just want a list. Can you just give me a list of the skills my company needs? And it doesn't exist. And for all of this stuff to work, there has to be a little bit of work done up front, but it's worth it, because then you can build on that going forward. You can do all of the things that Potoula is talking about, and then you can keep doing that, and it takes less work in the future because you've started there and you can just tweak it as the business needs to change. But a lot of companies are really hesitant to make that upfront commitment to what the skills and competencies are, but it's critical. And there isn't, you mentioned some of the lists that are available. Yes, those are good places to start. But as we all know, every single organization recognizes themselves as unique and different, and every role that they have is unique and different. And so if that's how you want to operate, then you have to be able to put the work into what those skills and competencies are.
And also have a mindset that it will change over time. So it's fluid. The culture is fluid. So I think it's really important that you look at your culture and you identify what type of culture. And if you do need to make changes, if you do see that you have a lot of attrition or challenges in recruiting, you really kind of need to assess why and figure out, is it your communication? Is it the opportunities? Is it the lack of opportunities they're offering? So I think it's really important to put in that work, as Dave said, and to work with an organization like Skillsoft to be able to have the support and to support your strategy. Potoula, my last question for today is, what else should we expect to see on your roadmap, and what are you excited about that's upcoming?
Yeah, so we are very excited about learning in the flow of life. We are looking very closely at what Microsoft is doing, Microsoft Teams, and we're excited to be offering an integration with Microsoft Viva, the new employee engagement platform that Microsoft is launching. We see that as a huge step forward with so many of our clients using Microsoft Teams as a collaboration tool. We see this as a gigantic step forward for learning in the flow. And so we have an integration with Viva, and we also have a Microsoft Teams app for our learning platform called Patricias that also gives some of the same benefits of collaborative learning and the native capabilities of MS Teams to be able to integrate learning into team sites and into project work. And so we see huge applications of that for our clients, for individuals, for team leaders, and also for L&D leaders using the cohort feature for leadership development programs that they might be running. So, I think it's going to shake things up a lot and create a lot of new opportunities for L&D leaders and for all of our clients. So it's the next big thing.
It's exciting. Can't wait to see it all come about, and good luck with it. Nice to have you with us today. Thank you everyone for listening in. Thank you, David, for joining me. And until next time, take care. Bye.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks, David. Bye-bye.